Welcome to our series, MasterMinds, Lessons in Leadership. I am joined by my co-host, Peter Linneman, where we discuss the intersection of strategy and leadership, which is at the vortex of what we feel makes all great companies great. And we're delighted to have joining us today Mit Shah, who is not only a friend and a client of both Peter's and mine, but is the founder and CEO of Noble Investment Group, and is probably one of the most widely known and widely respected people clearly in the hospitality industry and even more broadly than that. So Mit, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And if you could tell the audience, give us a little bit of the history of the firm and maybe some of your board activities, that would be great before we get into our session.
Bill and Peter, thank you. It's a real pleasure being here with you today. I think, when I think about our story and where, it is that we came from, it's not dissimilar from a lot of ownership groups in the hospitality industry. If you kind of peel back the overall sector, 60,000 hotels throughout the United States, a little over 10% of those are select service extended stay hotels that are owned by mom and pop, smaller owner operators throughout the country. It's a beautiful American dream story, and in that vein, that's how I found myself in this business. My parents became the proud owner of the Winkler Motor Inn when I was 10 years old, and this was the family business that I grew up in. We would do laundry, and then we would clean rooms, and then we'd be at the front desk. And so I learned at the early age kind of the ethos of the business, right? That it is a people business. It is a service business. In some ways, I found myself not wanting to do that for the rest of my life, and went to school to do something that was finance oriented, but I needed a job. And I got hired by the University Conference Center that Marriott ran. Because I had the prerequisite experience being able to operate the Hobic front desk system, which was the archaic card system that you'd go in and fill out. They were looking for somebody with 3 years of experience, and lo and behold, as a 17-year-old freshman, I had it. You fast forward 4 years, and I graduated from college in 1991 at a very dynamic time, as we all remember, in the economy and in the world. And I ended up getting a job with a small investment firm that was making a big stake in a new product called limited service hotels. But here was the catch. They wanted somebody that had a finance degree and someone that had 5 years of operating experience so they could, figure out, the intersection of the hospitality industry and this unique model. And so there I was getting into U-Haul, moving to Atlanta, and finding myself in this very exciting time in growth. And 6 months later, the partner that was running the group left to go form their own shop. And so it was really the Wild Wild West. I was learning how to read construction plans, architectural documents. I was sitting in meetings with respected developers. I was working with some of the very first CMBS deals that were taking place. And I was doing all these things, essentially a kid, but it gave me a very formative experience in thinking about the difference, between great organizations and those that were just kind of following the money. We used to laugh at the time. We'll all joke, and it says, there's a difference between two people and a cell phone and a real organization. And I found that out, through those efforts. And so, in my mind, when I started thinking about what it is that I wanted to really accomplish, it was the combination of all those experiences that gave me the courage to say, I might be able to do this on my own. And in 1993, we forged ahead and really with a goal to say, let's go figure out what we can do here. But a lot of that is really I owe to the history that I had and the experiences that I had, in my formative years.
And I have to ask, Bill, I know this is a little out of order. Do your parents still own the Winkle Motor Lodge?
No, Peter, they do not, and I will tell you that the only way that I could have started this business is if I would have figured out how to help them refinance the Winkler Motor Inn and a couple of minority investments that they had in a few other things to give me the ability to borrow from them enough money to build a small Hampton Inn. And I'll go back, and during those days you could do that with a couple $100,000, which is real money, by the way. And so my parents, trusted me enough and bet the ranch, if you will, on a young kid and a dream.
So, Mitt, on strategy, 2019 was one environment. Starting in March 2020, it was a very different environment, and now, probably right around now, or a month or so ago, is a very different environment. How have you curated your strategy over that in real time and directionality? Where are you going?
Peter, I know in our conversations, we share this with each other. Every 10 years or so, something happens in our industry that you could never expect, right? And we use the word unprecedented in that conversation. And the ruble collapse in '98, that was unprecedented.
Yeah.
The dot-com bust of 2000, of course, the tremendous tragedy of 9/11 and the GFC, the financial sector will never be back again. Well, I think as we think about that, like how could it be worse? You dropped 9.2% RevPAR after the tragedy of 9/11, 18.6% after the GFC. Last year, U.S. RevPAR dropped 51.8%. Mm. And never before did hotels, face this dynamic of, do you keep them open or do you shut them down? Based on the magnitude of this health crisis and this, the economic crisis that ensued. So I'll go back to your question with a couple of different points. In 2019, the concern really was that we were averaging 2% revenue per available room growth, similar to what GDP, over 98, plus percent correlation between real GDP and hotel demand over a 30 plus year period. I'm talking to an economist, so of course that number, right? And it always reverts back to the mean. And so, part of the concern was like, where's GDP going? Where's RevPAR going? And oh, by the way, like it's kind of hard in an operating environment to really create alpha, without really thinking about what the opportunities are in various different markets and like. So in 2019, we were trying to figure out the markets that we thought were going to grow higher than the U.S. macro, take costs out of the system, and kind of think about income as being an opportunity, in this sector. And fortunately for us, we had an opportunity in which to sell 2/3 of our portfolio in 2019. So the good news was that they were ready to sell. No crystal ball, but just hotels ready to sell. So our problems, as we found ourselves in March of last year, were smaller, but they were the same problems that others had. Now, they were better because there were select service extended stay hotels. You can make money at 50% occupancy, right? Because you only have 20, 25 full-time employees, but there's still real problems. You're still trying to figure out, what are the right pivot points to be the best fiduciary, to be the best human being, to take care of your people, and to think about the magnitude of this crisis and ensuring the fact you got a liquidity to deal with the next 2 years. Now, we all zero base our budgets in this business, like you should, right? And as we go through it, you say, what happens if you're up 5%? What happens if you're down 5%? What happens if you're down 10%? You're not talking about down 51.8%. And so as we think about like the time period that we were in, there was a lot of new conversations, and like others in the business, we'd have a 7:30 a.m. Zoom with our senior team, and then we'd have a 7:30 p.m. Zoom. right? We call it, there was the tale of two halves, and that allows us to get through the day. And you have dinner with your family, right? Maybe go on a walk, and you come back and you kind of recap in terms of what's happened. And I think the power of great teams really manifested itself as they always do during crisis, right? You know who you're in the trenches with, and you trust them, and you believe in them. And if you've got great teams, you figure your way out. And so when people ask me, like, what did you learn going through it? I said, I always start with, I learned that the people that I am fortunate in which to lead are truly the very best of the best. And with them, I'll go arm in arm, toe to toe, as we have for 28 years, and continue to fight, each and every day for doing the things that really matter.
Well, made a good segue into the concept of culture. As Peter and I have talked to a variety of leaders in the industry, they seem to correlate this whole concept of having a strong culture with business success. Give us a little bit of a perspective on how powerful culture is at Noble, and characterize for us, if you would, the culture at Noble.
Well, Bill, I think in every organization, the word culture is used because we recognize, how valuable it is in terms of our missions. And obviously, to do that, you have to figure out the best way in which to attract the best people. I think the best coaches have the best players, right? And
funny how that works, right?
I mean, that's kind of how it works. As you both know, the name Noble really came from the word we used around our family when we were growing up, and it was a name that my parents carried from them from India, which was a name that my word that my and there's a Gujarati translation to that they used over there. But that was a word that we used about your actions. Will always have a choice to be the most lucrative thing, the easiest thing. Make sure it's always the right thing. With all the constituents, make it the noble thing. And so when you kind of kid in a dream in 1993, and like, hey, you got to name your company. There was only one name. It was going to be Noble, and that's what we tried to we tried to make sure was woven into our DNA. Now, to do that, you have to find people that truly believe in that, with the character and the competency to be able to execute. And the only way that I knew how to do that was through alignment. And so I was very intentional at the very beginning about creating real alignment. I had the great fortune of starting with the business and being able to have the ownership of the business. And again, as both of you know, I had that as real enticements to go and attract really good human beings that had the competency that I thought together. Now, to go use it, the best coaches have the best players, to bring together a team. So now, after 28 years, we've got a team that's been together an average of over 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I think about it actually really simply. As a student, Emerson was really my favorite, writer and poet. And he would say that our chief want in life is someone to inspire us to be what we could become. And I feel like that's our responsibility to one another, right? Like, everybody has dreams, and our responsibility collectively is to help each other achieve, our dreams. And so we've been very intentional about doing that together, having communications, alignment of ownership and interests. And my dear friend John Gray, who had on, uses the right word, meritocracy, right? And if people believe in that, and you live it and you lead by it, it really is a self-fulfilling, cultural, example. And I would also say one other thing. I've been very fortunate that our team, while very, very intelligent, no one's ever said, I want to be the smartest person in the room, right? They felt like, and over time, that our job was to collectively build upon, what we hope to be really the brightest room in our sector, and to continue to learn and grow by bringing in others into our group, and then learning and growing externally, whether that's through executive development, public company boards, other types of areas in which to grow. So when we use the word culture, I believe that it is a combination of each of those different areas acting kind of together as one that that's built this. Now, the challenge, I would say, is that we're now 28 years old. I'm not the same kid that started this business, back in 1993, but I have another 20 years, at least I hope, of solid run rate. So we can accomplish something that very few real estate organizations of our size and scale can do, which is to have a generational, multi-decade run as a thoughtful, successful fiduciary. And so now, how do you build upon that culture with another generation, right? I'm starting to have great leaders retire. And that is new. It's not new in business, but it's new for us. So I would say I spent a lot of time thinking about the evolution of culture going forward.
So, Bill, it sounds like we know how Noble got its name. We need to go find the firm Pillage and Plunder, and as the counterpoint, right? I better Google Pillage and Plunder Inc. To find who they are.
Ferguson Partners is very unoriginal. Absolutely.
Exactly. So, Mit, your evolution, and this is my characterization, was almost hook or crook, getting the money I can from any legit source, friends and family, literally, then private equity, big guys and so forth, and then fully integrated, your own funds, soup to nut, right? You run the properties, you raise the funds. Talk to me about that evolution strategically.
Yeah. Look, I think we all have to start from somewhere, right? And our roots are, again, I'll go back to this, great American dream story that exists today. If you look at, again, what Noble's niche is today, there out of, again, 60,000 hotels, there's, a little less than 10% of them that are our target. 5,500 hotels or so, $150 billion of assets, 80% owned by mom and pops, 20% owned by institutions. And those mom and pops, they raise money through friends and family. They go and build a great $40 million hotel. They get a $30 million loan from their local lender. They sign full recourse, and they pass around the hat for $10 million around the community. That's how we started. Again, the numbers were a lot smaller back then, but same kind of example. And that's kind of how we built the business from 93 to 99. And then I think a lot of our collective group success gave us visibility to partnering with some great real estate private funds that taught us how to think about being an institutional fiduciary, right? And we really cut our teeth with some best in class institutional investors. And then we get this call from Terry Ahern at Townsend in 2006 to say, we're looking for a dedicated hospitality manager for our clients, and we'd like to talk to you about that. And we soon embark upon being, a fiduciary to some of the best institutions throughout America. And I'll tell you where we got lucky. Really, really fortunate in that our group of LPs that we started with were not only some of the very best, well-known, most respected. The ultimate beneficiary were those that we could truly align with, right? So whether these are state pension plans of our public employees and teachers and law enforcement and the like, or they're universities where you're helping for kids to go to college, or you're thinking about giving back in a material way in our communities. And it actually helped us think about how we could take this noble organization, with our desire and figure out ways in which to help make an impact in these communities. And what I'd say to you, Peter, is that part of this evolution, as you're a real estate investment manager, it's sort of like, I'll go back and again, I'll use the sports analogy. Like you're a kid and you're doing really well, and you want to go play, in college, and then you want to go play, professionally. Well, being an institutional real estate investment manager is the professionals. It's the big leagues, right? And not everybody gets to do it. And if you do it, you really need to be the best at it. Otherwise, you may not get to do it anymore. And we wake up every day thinking about that as our responsibility across a number of different paradigms. But if you can do it and you can actually go win and do it with people that you love and you care about internally and also with an LP base, like all of this comes together in a really, really special way. We all heard Simon Sinek say, hey, figure out your why, right? Here's what you do. Here's how you do it. But, really focus on why you do it. Well, for us, the why became super clear, right? We were making a real impact and a real difference. You want to go and get after it 7 days a week, at all hours of the day. It's because if you don't, it's not costing you, simply this. There's an impact to an end fiduciary that really matters. And so I would say, Peter, that two things I think we're very, very fortunate. One, people trusted us. When I would say that, I'm not sure, 6-8 years into our life cycle, we deserved all the trust that we're getting. But because of that trust, it gave us enormous energy to go and focus on the things that mattered, that now I focus 28 years later. And, this 100% fully realized track record up until, our most recent fund that, we realized all through every one of the cycles that I mentioned earlier. There's no chance we'd have been able to do that if not for the belief and trust that others gave us. And I will also say, now go back to this next 20 years, that trust has to continue to get earned every single, period of time as we go forward.
So, Mitt, earlier you touched on this whole issue of leadership lessons, and our industry actually is blessed with more than many industries as far as founders who have taken their companies to great places. And you're part of that list. If somebody asked you to look back at the evolution, 28 years, and really describe your aha moment, that leadership lesson that you'll never forget in building and leading your firm, what would it be?
In 2001, we were a company, again, 8 years old. We had gotten through, a lot of people don't talk about the Ruble collapse, but if you're a developer, right, and you had hotels under construction and that's what you did, kind of this, this industry, and all of a sudden there was no permanent capital market and you had a bunch of things, like it was a pretty big crisis. Well, we got through that. We got through the dot-com, bust, and we were feeling pretty good. And so in 2001, we had made a big stake and focus from a growth standpoint going forward. We had partnered for the very first time with institutional capital, in a private fund that we had as a partner in institutional capital. So now we had, we had that component on it. And there's a receipt that's in my office right now, just to the right of me, that's still on my board. And it was a big dinner that I hosted with my team. And we had a lot of things going on. We had just bought our first, Marriott hotel. We had 4 hotels under development. We were under contract with 2 more. And we're strategic planning for the future. And this was the right time. It was the fall. And it was a typical dinner. It was, here's a few drinks, here's some big steaks and this and that. And at 11:07 p.m., the timestamp on the thing, sign the check, and we're meeting in the office 7:30 in the morning, the next morning. Well, the receipt shows the full detail of the bill, but it also says September 10th, 2001 on it.
Mm.
And I remember, because all of us remember, but it's not that day that is etched forever in my memory. Because our strategic planning meeting started the day before, then it was that day, but then I remember September 12th. And I remember just having to go in the office because everything was just shut down. And, we're in Atlanta, so it was a different scenario, for us here. But I remember coming into the office early in the morning. My entire team was here, all in their offices. And I looked around, we walked around, we hugged, we talked, and then we got together and we met and we talked about what we were going to do next. I remember looking around the room, and as a young leader, not really knowing what was going to happen next. There's fear has many bounds that you go through, but they made me feel like we could accomplish whatever we needed to accomplish going forward, even though we didn't know what that was. And I remember at that time knowing that I had something. I had the blessings of having those that cared about our community, the sense of belonging that we were all trying to create together. And I knew that, that was something. And I kind of made it my mission thereafter to say, let's never stop figuring out what we can do together. And, that was a pivotal time.
So you've mentioned your parents a couple of times. I don't know if they're still alive.
They are.
I hope so.
They
They're
are.
alive
Thank
and
you.
healthy.
Thank you.
And if I told you I've got them on the phone here, and I'm about to ask them what about you makes them most proud, what do you think they're going to say?
I talked to my parents. I'm very fortunate. They're both with us, and I see them often. And our family unit is all here. I think they would say that. I think they would say that what my wife Reshma has meant to our family, what our kids who are now 23 and 20, who they are as human beings. How they represent the sacrifices that my grandparents made, their grandparents made, what we've tried to do, how we all together have taken this opportunity, immigrant family coming here and continue to try and do the right things. I think they'd be very proud of that family. Unit and how it stayed together and how, through all times and all periods, how that's mattered the most. And I hope that that's exactly what, I would say about our children. If asked that question,
I'll still be around, and I will ask that question of them when they're your age. Trust me, I'm going to ask them that, and I'm going to have you on the phone on the other end.
Because Peter and Bill, we know each other well enough that isn't that what you hope that they would say?
Of course,
right?
Of course.
Like, yeah. Does anything else matter more? Right?
Of course.
And so I'm hopeful that that's something that will continue to be said about all of our families, right, as we go forward.
So, Mitt, I've got 3 words that have been calligraphized above my head, and Peter's going to talk about the third one in a minute: generosity. But the other 2 are humility and integrity. And over the course of my 40-some years in this business, I have found that almost to the person that those are 3 words that the great leaders live by. And humility is about giving other people credit for the success that any individual has had. And as we've talked to leaders, we've asked another wonderful question, which is, tell us about your mentors. Who is your greatest mentor and what did you learn? How would you answer that question?
Bill, I've been very fortunate. First of all, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I've been very fortunate to have had great mentors, as you know. I think out of the many that I've had the opportunity to call on across all different times and all different situations, two that really come to mind, and I would say the second one, not because you asked me about one, but I would say two because we've lost both of them this year, are Arnie Sorensen and Mark Elliott.
Mm.
And they were like brothers to me, and I would say that 75% of our conversations were about family and humanity and faith and things that matter outside of business. And I call them and we talk, and our conversations we're very focused on what we just said, the things that matter the most. And but yet they were incredible stewards of their businesses, iconic, created in amazing amounts of vitality across the industry, and did things that no one that was there before them had done. But yet they still found the way to be such incredible fathers and spouses and brothers, and they seemingly were able to do it all. And I think we struggle sometimes with, like, how do we do it all? How are we the best father and the best spouse and the best friend and the best leader? Is there enough time in the day? Can we get it done? But for me, the two of them represented all that's good in humanity, and I miss I miss the ability to engage, and if you ask me, I would have said my father, because of all he means to me. I would have said Arnie and Mark, but there are others, and I think in some way it's our responsibility to be that for others as well, right? There's lots of successful people, incredibly successful people, but those that can kind of hit the trifecta, I'm amazed by, and I think that's really my life's journey. I'm continuing to try to figure out how to be the very best father and husband and friend and leader that I can be, across all of those areas.
Amen. Amen.
And Bill has, as he says behind him, it says generosity is the last. Talk to us a minute as we head down the home stretch here about how philanthropy of time, energy, monetary figures into your life and focus.
Peter, it's very important for us, simply because I'll go back to it, that everybody has dreams, and I think our job as human beings is to help others achieve theirs. And philanthropy for us has been very educationally rooted. And for students that can't necessarily afford the means to go to schools that they are totally qualified in which and need to go to, and as well as around the world from a healthcare standpoint, and childhood poverty and nutrition and wellness. And so those things are important, because without those things, my parents grew up in a small rural manufacturing town in India, and a very similar story, didn't arrive here with anything. And if not for student financial aid, my father wouldn't have been able to go to college. I wouldn't have been able to go to college. My dad made $24,000 a year when I left for college, and I had to work, and I had to get student loans, and I had to have student financial aid. And if not for those things and a family that pushed me, I wouldn't have had those. So I think for us, when we think about what do we spend, what do we save, and what do we give, right? It's the old adage, it's the three jars, right? Et cetera. The giving part is intentional because I think it's the flywheel for humanity. The more that we can do for this next generation to grow up and to lead lives that matter, the better off, all of us will truly be. And so that's how we've thought about, the importance of what we like to do.
Bill, I'll let you get the last question and take us home.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. So let's fast forward, Mitt, 20 years from now. And here's your opportunity to give back. And let's say your next generation of leadership is around the table and you want to impart a special word of wisdom, having run the firm for almost 50 years, right? What's the most important thing that they need to know from you as fiduciaries of the business going forward?
The easiest thing to say is to always do the right thing, not the most lucrative thing, not the easiest thing. Those decisions seem obvious when times are good. They should seem very obvious when times aren't as good, right? And so there's a fundamental, I call it the name on the door, right? It's there for a reason. But that's the collective viewpoint. And I would be disappointed if we have a group of leaders that were here that didn't have a stake in the ground, didn't wear the name on their sleeve. But on a personal level, here's what I say to our team every year. So when we sit down and we talk about the next year, I say be incredibly deliberate about your peer group and your aspirational peer group. You asked me a great question. Who are your mentors? The other question, who are your heroes? They might not be your mentors, but who are your heroes? Who are the people that you look up to and why? For whatever discipline that might be, whether it's as a parent or as a philanthropist or some other things. I said, and let's go figure out how to make them a part of your peer group, right? So that you can learn and grow and develop and try new things and have experiences. And because that to me is the beautiful part of what we do together in teams, right? You help each other think about, what it is that you could become, right? And so I hope that that we're sitting with a room of leaders that have incredible amounts of desire to continue to grow and develop and learn and not be the smartest person in the room, but also respect the name on the door and to do the right thing when it's really hard to do the right things sometimes.
Well, Mitt, that is terrific. And Peter, I don't know if we're really smart or just dumb lucky, but most of the people we've interviewed have not had a chance to see any of the other interviews.
That's
and
correct.
Yet, the answers to the questions that we have asked, whether it be about, what do they want to be remembered for, who are their mentors, whatever, are remarkably similar. And
Why do you think that's luck? That has to do with our ability to identify great leaders.
Mitt, I didn't set them up for that, just so you know. Anyhow, but Mitt, thank you. This has been terrific, heartfelt and thoughtful. And that's who you are, and that's why we love you. So thank you for being part of this very much. So
couldn't imagine doing it with two better people that I love and respect that are part of my peer group. So thank you.